never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
We're talking today with Marion Graff of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Graff, can you start with some background on yourself? To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Ironwood, Michigan, 1922.
Okay. Now, did you grow up there?
No, when I was 2 years old, we moved to Grand Rapids. So most of my life has been in GR.
Okay. And why did you move to Grand Rapids?
This was my mother's idea. My dad was, okay, first of all, my dad and mother migrated from Europe. Mm-hmm. And my dad wound up in the iron ore mines. But my mother had two sisters in Grand Rapids and a brother, and she wanted to be closer to them. Mm-hmm. So then in 1923, we moved into Grand Rapids, 23, 24, mm-hmm. someplace in there.
Okay. Now, did your father find a job down there?
In Grand Rapids? Yeah, he went to Burke and Gay in the furniture industry. Mm-hmm.
And did he keep that job during the Depression?
No, Burke and Gay closed up, and it was rough just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. He wound up doing some work. I had a uncle that had a farm in Casanova, and he would go there and help out there and get crops. He never got paid, but we got paid in crops. Mm-hmm. Half a pig sometimes, chickens, potatoes, mm-hmm. that kind of stuff.
All right.
And that got us partially by.
Okay. And how many kids were in the family?
There were 6 of us, so we had quite a group. So when you have to feed six of us, mm-hmm. it takes a little bit. But my mother was very resourceful. We also had a little garden. We had chickens. We had rabbits.
Okay. And where were you living in Grand Rapids?
At 615 Michigan, 615 Houseman Avenue.
All right.
Grand Rapids, Michigan, northeast side.
Okay. Now, was there still room there? Was it more open?
The house is still there. Mm-hmm. St. Isidore's Church is still there. Mm-hmm. We were 3 blocks away from St. Isidore's Church. Mm-hmm. That's where I went to school.
Yeah. But today, I don't think they'd let you keep chickens there.
No, I don't. Well, they talked about it. Mm-hmm. I think it was someplace in the paper that chickens should be allowed.
Right. Yeah. But now today it's pretty built up. Now, how long did you stay in school?
Okay, St. Isidore's Catholic Central and Aquinas College. Okay. When I got out of the Navy, I wound up finishing up at Aquinas, okay. BA, Business Administration.
All right. When did you graduate from high school?
1940.
All right. And then did you go on to Aquinas College after high school?
I went to Aquinas for a while, but everything was a little bit touch and go. I mean, you didn't know whether to start a semester or whether not to start a semester. Mm-hmm. I know the last semester in 42, I didn't start because I knew I was going in, but when?
Now, did you go ahead and enlist, or did you wait to be drafted?
No, I enlisted. Mm-hmm. We enlisted.
Okay. Now, before we get to that, do you remember how you learned about Pearl Harbor?
Do I remember?
How you learned about Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor was on a Sunday morning. The radio at that time, we had the radio, and it was late morning or first part of the afternoon, and the news flash came on. Mm-hmm. Pearl Harbor bombed.
Okay. Now, did you know where Pearl Harbor was?
No. Well, yes and no. I was South Pacific someplace. Okay. Now, I mean, from a little bit of history that we had, either at St. Isidore's or at CC.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did you go to Catholic Central? Okay. Now, before Pearl Harbor, were you paying much attention to the war in Europe? Did you know what was going on there?
Not much. I mean, at that age, in the teens, you had other things.
Yeah. Now, what country had your parents come from?
Poland.
Okay, they come from Poland.
Yeah.
So did they pay attention when Poland was invaded?
That they did. Yes, they did. Yeah.
All right.
Very, very much. But I mean, there wasn't very much you could do except listen to what's going on.
All right. Now, did you figure that sooner or later America was going to get into the war, or did you think we would stay out of it?
Well, it sounded like we're trying to stay out, but we were edging closer and closer to it.
Okay. Now, when you enlisted, why did you choose the Navy?
Okay, I had a brother that was in Fort Lewis in the Army, and he says, Marion, don't go in the Army. Get into the Navy. So, and as I say, being senior lifeguard, water safety instructor, water was second nature.
Yeah.
So, I just enlisted into the Navy.
Okay. Now, when you were at Aquinas College before you went in, what were you studying?
It was. What do I want to say? Drafting.
Okay.
Went into drafting, but that didn't turn out as good as what I thought it was going to be.
All right. And then how much college had you completed? How many semesters had you completed before you went to the Navy?
It was 3.
Okay. So a year and a half.
Year and a half,
All
yeah.
right.
Then after that, you didn't know, it was that close, you didn't know what to do.
Okay. So then you enlisted at the end of 42.
Right.
Okay. And then when did you go to boot camp?
In March of 43.
Okay. And where did they have the boot camp?
This was in Virginia, Camp Perry, Virginia, which was not too far away from Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Because they gave us liberty, and we wound up in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I mean, for a day or two.
All right. Now, how did they get you out to Camp Perry?
By bus. How did they get us where?
Yeah, how did you get from Michigan down to Camp Perry?
From Detroit, we took a train and down to Perry.
And how long did that take?
I don't really remember. I mean, what would we got? About 600 miles, day and a half.
Okay. So you stopped a lot?
It was a stop and go. Yeah.
All right.
Very much.
Yeah. Now, what kind of facilities did they have at Camp Perry? Was it an old base or a new one?
No. They had houses. I don't know if you want to call them houses, but they were barracks. That's
Right.
what they were.
Right.
They were barracks with 30 to 50 guys in the barracks.
All right. And what kind of training did they give you?
Well, basically just basic training. We used broomsticks for rifles, and they drilled us a little bit on the handling of a rifle, which was a broomstick. They didn't have anything rifle. We never fired a rifle in boot camp. Most of it was marching.
All right. Now, did they teach you a lot about the Navy, naval terms and language and things, or?
Well, we had a lot of movies. If you weren't on the grinder, we're inside someplace with some type of schooling.
Right. Okay. Did they put a lot of emphasis on discipline? Following orders, saluting?
I would say yes. Yeah, very much so. Well, you have to have discipline in order to have order. So that was something that I think they pushed.
Okay. Now, was it easy for you to adjust to life in the Navy?
I think like everybody else, it took a little bit to adjust. It was not a real easy turnover. But I think the longer we're in, the easier it got.
Okay. And how long was boot camp? How many weeks?
I'm trying to think. I think 13.
Okay, so about 3 months.
13 or 15, someplace in there.
All right. Now, over the course of that time, you said that they gave you liberty, you could leave the base?
When we finished, I think when we finished boot camp, we were there for 2 more weekends, and one of the weekends they gave us Saturday and Sunday. And I know I wound up in Washington, D.C. For that weekend.
Okay. But otherwise, you were on the base pretty much the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now-
Pretty much they gave us 3.2 beer to drink.
All right. Now, during boot camp, did you ever actually go on a ship, or did you just stay on shore?
Nothing. Nothing. It was all on shore.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, what happened after boot camp?
Okay, then they put us aboard a train and we went to Tiburon, California. Tiburon is about 20 miles east of San Francisco on the Sacramento River.
Okay. Now, how long did it take to get there?
Well, I remember we stopped in Colorado and we had snow on the ground. So it was the end of May. It was in May that we went there.
Okay.
And there was snow on the ground in Colorado. Got up and looked and there was snow.
All right. So you get out to Tiburon. Now, once you got to Tiburon, what did you do?
Okay, I was put in as they call them a striker in the medical department, and that's for I was there for May, June, July, August, and September.
Okay. Now, did they give you medical training there?
Well, whatever the doctors gave us,
Okay.
basically whatever there was. Most of it was just taking care of the few patients that Tiburon had.
But did you receive any instruction?
No.
Okay.
No, nothing. It was just visual.
Okay. So a striker was just sort of a laborer, like an orderly or something like that?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just an addition. Right. Just,
Okay. Now you're there all of that time. What were they doing on that base? Were they just training people, or?
well, it was a dry dock,
Okay.
and that was basic training. They had a dry dock there, and right out in the water, and then the thing would go down and come up.
All right. So they would bring ships into the dry dock to
Well,
repair or refit?
no, just mostly. I can't believe that we ever had a ship come into anything. It was just it was a dry dock there, and they showed how it was built.
Okay.
And I think the biggest thing was that the dry dock would come up, and they had plans, and they put blocks. When a ship would come in, it'd sit right on those blocks.
So they were training men to work on a dry dock? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a training. It was a training center.
All right. All right. And so you said you were there about 5 months or so?
Right.
Okay. And then where did they send you after that?
To Balboa Park in San Diego. Balboa Park was a zoo converted with tents.
Right. Okay. And why were you there?
Well, they had course school, medical course school,
Okay.
and that was 13 weeks. And I remember besides opening up a book, they gave us an orange and they gave us a syringe, and they said, "This is the way you give shots." And they said, "You take the orange, you take the syringe, pull it back so that you don't hit an artery or nerve, and then squeeze it in." And that's the way I learned how to give a shot.
All right. So they taught you to give shots. What else did they teach you?
Well, everything else was a book. Everything else was learning what was in that book.
Okay.
The book was probably 2 inches thick. I mean, it was a full medical book, and that was yours, and you better study it.
Okay. Now, did they have classrooms, or were you outside the whole time?
No, they had classrooms.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
And how long were you there?
13 weeks.
Okay. And what were the living conditions like there?
Well, like in boot camp, only I think it was a little bit better, and we didn't have too much freedom. I know we did get enough liberty because we wound up going to Long Beach, and Los Angeles. And this was on Highway 101, and we would hitchhike. And I can remember more truckers with semi-trucks. They would stop, and by the time he stopped about 3 times, he'd have 100 guys in there. And he says, "I'm going to Los Angeles. When I get there, there'll be a streetcar someplace close by. You can get a streetcar and go wherever you want to go." And that's what the heck we did. Everybody just piled into that trailer.
Okay. And when you got to Los Angeles, what did you do?
Just looking for something to do.
Okay.
Well, the U.S.O. was one of the good places. Pepsi-Cola Center. If you were hungry, you could always get a hamburger sandwich and a Pepsi.
Right.
So there were the U.S.Os that were good. At one of the U.S.Os, we did see Bob Hope and his sidekick. I can't remember his name, but there was Bob Hope. His whole troupe
Right.
was in there, and we saw a couple of those shows.
Okay. All right. Now, when would you go into San Diego itself, or was there nothing to do in San Diego?
There wasn't too much to do in San Diego because that was a Navy town. Yeah.
Not much else there.
Not much.
Okay. All right. So, and then you said you're living in tents in Balboa Park?
We lived in tents.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, cold tents. We froze at night and took everything off at noon.
Okay. Now, did the men get sick?
Pardon?
Did the men get sick with the hot and the cold?
We had that's something else. I don't think there was any of us then that didn't have some type of a cold, of a fever, of a flu, of something.
All right.
It just was not real good weather, or something that you're not used to.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and you didn't have barracks or anything like that.
No,
so, yeah.
no.
Okay.
Everything was tend.
All right. How did they feed you?
I think the big tent was the feeding thing. It was livable food anyway. The bad part of it, and for a long time I didn't like it. Although I had training when I was in high school and college for the swimming courses, we got it through the Red Cross. The Red Cross in San Diego charged us for a cup of coffee and charged us for cigarettes. So I've had a barrier for the Red Cross for a long time. I mean that they would pull something like that. Pepsi-Cola gave it away.
Yep.
Red Cross and Sally's Army gave it to you.
Or sold it to you?
Pardon?
Sold it to you? Red Cross sold it to you?
No, yeah. Red Cross sold it.
Right.
The Salvation Army and Pepsi, here it is, sailor.
Right.
Or here it is, serviceman. It didn't make any difference who you were. If you had a uniform on, you had food.
Right.
So you couldn't say that you were starving because there were places that it was available for nothing.
Right. Okay. Now, after you completed your medical corps training, what did you do next?
Okay, from San Diego, we went to Treasure Island in San Francisco, and from Treasure Island, we stayed in Treasure Island either 2 or 3 days because we had one night of liberty and we went into San Francisco. And then from there, we took the train up into Seattle and the ferry from Seattle to Bremerton. And in Bremerton, we lived in the YMCA that was converted. I can't remember. We either had 6 or 8 beds, single beds, in a little bitty room.
Right. And were you all medical corpsmen?
Yes.
Yeah. So you'd all come up together from
all
training.
the same group.
All right.
Yeah.
And why were you in Bremerton?
Pardon?
Why were you in Bremerton?
The ship Okay, they assigned us to the BB-48, the West Virginia.
Okay.
That's where the West Virginia was in dry dock.
Now,
And we were assigned to that ship.
Now, the West Virginia, that was one of the battleships that had been at Pearl Harbor, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And how did it get from Pearl Harbor to Bremerton? What had happened to it?
They raised it. They put from what I read, they put steel, closed it up, and all the doors, I think even then, they could put air into it and blow it out.
Right.
And after they put the steel plates on, she came up. And in fact, from what I read, they got to the point that they even got one boiler going, one or two boilers going on it. So instead of being towed completely from Pearl, she ran on her own into Bremerton, Washington.
And then once they got her to Bremerton, what did they do?
They stripped it and started all over again. I've got pictures of it, but you would never know. You would never know it's the same ship. The hull was the same, and they patched it up. You'd never know it. And then they did something that I don't know if they do it anymore. The ship originally was 96 feet. They put what they call blisters. It would be just like taking your knees and putting 8 or 9 foot pieces of steel or ballast out there. Supposedly, if they got hit by a torpedo, it would hit that blister and split the blister, but never get into the ship.
Okay. So you've got extra protection at the waterline kind of below. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And now, how long did you spend up in Bremerton?
Well, we were there January, February, March, April, May, June, and I think we left June for shakedown cruise in July, and then we wound up at San Pedro for repairs, what they were to do, and I think in September we started on our way to Pearl Harbor.
All right.
It was in September.
Okay, so September of '44, so
Right.
a little under 3 years after Pearl Harbor, you're heading out.
Yeah.
And you've got a full crew now, and
Yeah, we had a full crew. Well, our complement was supposed to be about 2,400. We wound up with about 2,800. The 300 or 400 additional were old timers, if you want to call them. That's somebody that's been on the ship before.
Okay.
And then they were training us.
all right. And so, did you put them off at some point?
Yeah. After slowly, we got rid of them. We had a first class that was in our H division, and he got put off. I mean, he was through several other places aboard ship,
Right.
but he was. They had him in, and then they let him. Then they took him out. I don't know where he went, but he went probably to another new ship or
Right.
someplace.
Okay. Okay, so you sail out to Pearl Harbor. Do you stay there long, or do you keep going?
No, we didn't stay there very long because October 20th, Dugout Doug landed on Leyte. We call him Dugout Doug because everybody else aboard out of the Pacific was Douglas MacArthur, Dugout Doug.
Kind of left over from being on Corregidor, I suppose, or whatever. But okay, so your ship, the West Virginia, is part of the fleet that's going to the Philippines.
Well, this was on we went towards Leyte. It was about, I would say, the 15th of October. Because he landed the 20th.
Yep.
And on the 28th or 29th was Surigao Straits. That's where the Japanese were trying to put a pincer movement in on us, and it failed miserably.
Okay. Yeah, because there were a series of battles, naval battles, that kind of went on around Leyte, and the Surigao Straits was one of those. Now that's the one that you were in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we were. I think air defense. From the time we got there, you had to watch out for the sneaky Japanese that came in. They would come in, and you better be prepared for them.
So these were kamikaze planes or just regular aircraft?
At that
yet?
point, there was not so much kamikaze. It wasn't kamikaze until we got into Okinawa,
Okay.
basically.
So at this stage, it's just regular Japanese aircraft.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what was your when there was a battle going on or at general quarters? Where were you?
I was on the forecastle deck, which is the top deck, and we had a room probably 10 by 20, and that was a first aid station, and that was my station during air defense or general quarters.
Okay.
And it was we had pretty much everything in it. And then our regular station was up forward and 2 decks down. That was the hospital room.
Right. So could you see much of what was going on, or did you just have to let other people tell you?
I could open the door and see. I was one bulkhead away from the 16-inch guns, and one bulkhead away from the 550 38s or the 538s, and the 20 millimeter.
Okay. So it was noisy.
It was noisy. I think that's where I lost some of my hearing.
All right. Now, were you ever on deck or anything like that during an air attack? Did you ever see any Japanese planes?
Yes. I could open up the door and see it. Yeah. Yeah, I saw several planes. There's a couple of planes that I'm almost positive one hit the bulkhead of our ship. It came down, hit the water, and kept on coming, and you could hear a boom, but nothing happened. I mean, it didn't penetrate, it didn't do nothing, but that's how close a couple of them came.
Right. Now, do you remember, what do you remember about the day of the Surigao Straits battle? Or what do you know about that?
About the which?
Surigao Strait, the battle itself.
Well, okay, the real battle of Surigao Straits was about 15 minutes for us. They had this all planned out pretty much. They had the PT boats with torpedoes on it harassing the Japanese Navy. And I think they had 6, if I remember, 6 tin cans that came in, and they sunk a battleship. There was that much power, or that much, and then we came in, and we got credit for saying we fired 90 rounds in 15 minutes.
And at what range were you firing?
We started out at 42,000 yards.
Okay, so that's a long way.
It's a long way, but as I said before, our commander was 30 years before his time. He was an electrical engineer, really, and he knew we had the latest equipment aboard it, and he used it, and he knew how to use it, and he was good. I will say that. Captain Wiley was very fair. He had one thing that he insisted on. When we went into general quarters, if you didn't have your shirt buttoned up, and the shirt buttoned up, and a hat on it with a screen on it, he'd court-martial you. He'd throw you right in the brig. Apparently someplace during his lifetime, somebody got flash burn, and he wanted no flash burn. And boy, I'll tell you, he insisted. And no beard. No beard. But other than that, he was as liberal as could be.
Yeah. Now, on a battleship like that, I mean, how much did you see of the senior officers? Because it was 2,000.
Of the officers?
Yeah.
Well, in the medical department, we lived with them. I mean, every day, sick call, surgery, we lived with them.
Right.
Well, we lived with them there, but after 4 or 5 o'clock, I mean, they would go to their quarters, and we would go to ours.
But did you see much of the captain or the higher officers?
Not really. Not really. it's surprising. The ship isn't run by the gold braid. The ship is run by the seamen.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, on your way out, at some point, I think your ship crossed the equator or the date line? Or?
Yeah. Well, we were polywogs, and then we crossed the equator at 00 latitude and unknown longitude. And they initiated us into the deep sea, and it was quite a ceremony. Some of the older timers says this is a cut ceremony because we're in this type of an area, because he says otherwise it would last a week. And this lasted, I think, 2 or 3 days. They even built a pool up on top on the forecastle on the front part of it, filled it up with water, and threw us in.
What kinds of things went on in the ceremony? I mean, if they throw the polywogs in the water, what else do they do with you?
Well, a few other things.
All right. So basically kind of like a large-scale fraternity hazing or something.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But now, does the captain participate in that, or do they just watch from somewhere?
No. It was just, yeah. There was officers there, but you were either the King Neptune or not. So now King Neptune rules us.
Right. But if the ones who had crossed the equator, though, those were shellbacks. Was that what they called them?
Polywogs.
But after you cross,
Yeah.
then what do you become?
I think you call it shellback.
Shellback, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those guys didn't have to go through it again.
Pardon?
So those guys didn't have to go through the ceremony again. They could just watch.
Yeah.
Or work it. Yeah.
There was enough of them watching, but there was, well, I would say two-thirds, 3/4 of the ship was all polywogs.
Right, because you'd have really a new crew. You wouldn't have kept all the old guys from
Yeah.
1941. Yeah. Okay. Now, was that before you got out to the Philippines? Was that on the way out?
This was the first part of October.
All right.
Is when this happened.
Okay. So you get up to the Philippines, you have your brief battle. Now, after the battle at Surigao Straits, did they tell you what happened? Was there news that went through the ship, or did you not really know?
The only thing at Surigao Straits, they came out and they said the Japanese dispersed completely. And where they went, they went every direction there was. Now, I don't know. We don't know where they went, but apparently they turned around and went back to where they came from.
Right.
Either that or they had a base someplace.
Yeah. Now, do you remember what happened after that? After the battle, where did you go, or what did you do?
No, well, then we came back to Leyte and just took up our position. Now the Army was landed and they needed help. They needed some bad help, because we expended 300 16-inch shells and over 1,000 5-inch, trying to soften up the land for the soldiers that were landed and not getting stopped right there. Right. Because they could have got stopped real easy right there.
Yeah,
it made it a heck of a lot easier. But we had a lot of firepower. We had we did, I think, more damage than the airplanes could do or did, because you had the men over here, and they would call in, and they would give us coordinates. Right. And once we got the coordinates, that was it.
Yeah. Well, how big was a 16-inch shell?
Pardon?
How big was a 16-inch shell? How large was the shell?
Okay, 16 inches by, I'd say 2.5 feet.
And that's the warhead?
That was just like a bullet.
Right. And then it has to be, but then that's attached to where the propellant is? Because the whole shell,
well,
when they fire it?
They put the shell in, and then they'd put any place from 3 to 6 to 9 bags of powder. The powder was 16 inches by a foot.
Yeah.
And then they would lock it and fire it.
Right. Okay.
And the gyros would keep the ship, or would keep that barrel
Right.
on an even keel.
Yeah. Okay. So you provide ground support on Leyte. You're supporting the troops who were on the ground, and then after they get farther inland, where do you go next?
Well, we would go from there. Okay, we had Leyte, Mindanao. There was several other places that they would call for us.
Right.
And then we just steamed to there. We ran aground and we damaged 3 props. So in November, we had to go to, I think it was Palau, and they had a dry dock there, and we were there for 3 weeks. By the time they got the screws, took the old ones off, put the new ones on, it took about that time, and they did some other work on that ship.
Okay. Now, did you get to go? Did they put you ashore during that time, or did you stay on the ship?
We went ashore. We had Acme beer. So, but yeah, we did get some liberty to go on to go on dry land.
Right.
But not that much.
Yeah.
We did some swimming off in it also, but that was basically pretty much it.
Okay.
Still with the ship.
All right. And then once they fix up the ship, do you go back to the Philippines then?
And we went back to the Philippines all the way up into February. And in February, we invaded Iwo Jima. Okay, we were supposed to come back and have liberty and have rest and recreation. We got into it. We got back to the recreation area, and there was a message: we need the ship at Iwo Jima. We loaded 30,000 ton, or 3,000, not 3, and closer to 30,000 ton. That was supposed to take 2 weeks to load. We loaded it in 27 hours.
Okay.
And we were on our way to Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima was invaded at 0600. We got there and started firing at noon. So they had the West Virginia at Iwo Jima. Well, we could see Iwo Jima at 80 miles away.
Right.
And we were there at 9 o'clock. Then they got orders at noon, at 11 o'clock, to head towards Mount Suribachi. We were at the far end of it. Is when the heck we did the shelling, and that was, I guess that was the roughest part. That was because it was everything was in the mountains.
Right.
They had tunnels in there and caves.
Yeah.
So that was the roughest part. But we did close up caves.
How long did you stay off Iwo Jima, do you think?
We were there for quite some time. Yeah. I don't remember just how long, but we were there. We were there for quite some time until they secured it anyway. In fact, we were there when they raised the flag. We were that close.
Right.
Because they told us to come on deck if you wanted to see it.
Okay.
And you could see the flag.
Yeah.
It's too bad you didn't have a long lens camera.
Right.
Because we could have taken some pictures of it.
Right. Because that's about a week or so in, I think. I mean, it's fairly, the battle keeps going through the rest of the island, but they get up to the top of Suribachi within about a week or whatever of landing. But still, that's a long time to be there firing shells, too.
Yeah. Well, we were there. We were there. And then I think we went back, and then we had some rest area, but not for too long because we were already headed again to Okinawa.
Now, where would they send you for R&R? Was there a small island somewhere, or?
We called it Mogmog.
Okay.
I don't know what the name is, but that was the nickname or something. We're going to recreation area where Mogmog. someplace out there in that Pacific.
Right. Was it like a coral atoll or just a regular island? Or
No, it was just an island.
Okay.
Yeah, just an island. You could go swimming, had a couple of beers, that kind of stuff. I mean,
All right. So you get a brief break anyway, and then
Yeah,
you go off
yeah.
to Okinawa. Now, how was Okinawa a different experience from these other ones?
Pardon?
What made Okinawa different from the other battles so far?
Okay, Japanese planes. One-way trip. They would train, the way we got the story, they would train the pilots to be able to land and take off. And that was it. They gave them some sake, little of the rice, booze, and enough gasoline to go in and hit. The way we get the story, they went after the carriers, number one, the battleships, number two, the cruisers, number three, and the tin cans. That's what that's where they were. They looked for them, and they could sure as a heck know the difference, I think, between a carrier and a battleship, which is, carrier was what, 900 to 1,100 feet long. We were 627 feet long, 96 foot wide, and the cruiser was probably 400 foot long, and the tin can was 300.
Right.
So, but they picked on the big boys. They called the West Virginia for a long time the ghost ship.
Why did they call it that?
We were on all the battles, but we didn't get hit till April 1st.
What happened then?
Well, 4 valves or 3 valves in the K came out. We saw them. This was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We fired on them. One of them came right across the forward part of the ship, the front part of it, didn't do nothing. I think the other 2 took off, but one of them came at us. I would say that the pilot was dead, and I would say that the 20 millimeters disabled the 500-pound bomb, because the 500-pound bomb went 50 feet from me through 2 decks, never exploded. The engine was found in the cook's galley. The head of the pilot was also found in the cook's galley. So the pilot was dead before he hit the ship.
Right.
But I think just the aim of it. We lost 4 men. We had 7 of them that were injured, but 4 were killed in the turret box. But that's all. That was the only damage. Hell, they patched the holes up, and we were underway the next day. Never stopped.
Now, if the bomb had gone off, what
I
kind of
wouldn't be
damage?
here.
Yeah.
The last article in my little paper, one of the officers put an article in the last sentence. They said, we'd have lost 1/3 of the ship and a 3rd company.
Right.
And I would be 2 decks. Well, depending on where that bomb would go off. If it would have hit the first deck, I was one bulkhead away.
Yeah.
On the top side, so it was that close.
Now, so did you stay on station after you got hit, or did you go away and come back, or?
No, we stayed right with it. As I say, the repair crew came right in, patched the holes, patched the 2 decks, got the galley back going again, and as I say, the next morning we were on our way. We were back at Okinawa firing.
Right.
We lost the 4 men, but that's it.
Okay. Now, did you ever get hit by any regular kamikazes?
That was the kamikaze.
Yeah. Well, he may or may not have been an intentional kamikaze, because some of the Japanese aircraft with better pilots or crew, they would have enough fuel to go home. Others were just suicide planes.
Well, I don't know.
Because the other guys didn't hit you.
If they're coming at you, they were kamikazes.
Okay.
I would say.
Same difference for you.
Yeah, because the other two, this ship, one came and went by the front of us, and this one here came right at us.
Right.
And the other two, I don't know what happened to them, but they didn't come at the ship.
Now, after that, did you get hit by any others?
None.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was still a pretty lucky ship on the whole.
We were very fortunate that we only lost 4 men, and that was it.
Okay. So as a pharmacist's mate, most of the time, did you just deal with people who got sick or needed medicine, or?
We dealt with everything, including surgery. I've got pictures of myself in all in white in surgery.
But would these be for just medical conditions, or were they?
Well, we had Dr. Reiner, head surgeon from Portland, Oregon Hospital, that was a whiz. We timed him on an appendectomy, believe it. His incision was less than 2 inches, and he was in, got the appendectomy, and out in 12 minutes.
Wow.
Our lieutenant commander, Wiley, would take 2 hours. But he was the regular Navy man.
Yep.
So there was the difference between 2 men, 2 doctors. One of them, like I said, he would get in and get out. And the other lieutenant commander, he was not good. Dr. Cool was another one. He was a few years out of medical school, but he was pretty good. It took him about 20 minutes to do it.
Okay. So you had that kind of business, the appendectomies and other.
Appendectomies, whatever else there was always somebody, someplace, and everybody had a snotty nose.
So how did you wind up spending most of your time aboard ship?
Well, for 8 hours, we were in sick bay and taking care of it. Then after that, after that, there was a lot of gambling on ship. I never was much for gambling. We had our own little group that we gambled penny ante. I mean, 5 cents a game, penny a point, something like that.
Yep.
And that was part of it. Some of it, if you wanted to, I used to take that book and go into that book and read it. Something to do, something. If something came up, I mean, that book basically had everything in it, so you could ask the doctor, what about this, what about that?
So that's your medical book, the one that you'd gotten back in training.
Yeah, the
and so
medical
forth.
book.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that was a lot of it. We had movies, a little bit of whatever else you could do, but that was basically pretty much it.
All right. Now, how long do you think you spent supporting at Okinawa?
How long were we at Okinawa?
Yeah.
Okay, in February, in March we were done. I think I can't remember when Okinawa was in, but we were there.
It starts in April. So
First of April, right in April.
Yeah.
Okay. So we were there April, May, June, July.
Yeah.
And
so the whole campaign, pretty much.
And into August.
Okay.
That's when we learned that the Missouri, the New Jersey, the West Virginia were going to go into Tokyo Bay.
All right. So
we wouldn't be here either if that, because the Japs had 1 million troops. If you know about history, they had 1 million troops that could, and they had 18-inch guns up in the hills on railroad cars, on railroad tracks, which would come out and go back in.
Yep.
So as I say, I don't know with 18-inch guns how good they were. Our radar was good, and I don't know what they had in radar, but I don't think they had as good of a radar as we did. But even with 18-inch guns in their backyard, it could have been tough.
Yeah. But you're going to Tokyo Bay not to fight, but
Pardon?
well, but you didn't go there to fight. You went for the surrender ceremony, right?
Yeah, we were there.
Okay. So what was that like? Did you get to see any of it?
Well, yeah, I got to see parts of it. I went up on the crow's nest, and you could see it because we weren't that far away from the Missouri, and you could see the Japanese lined up,
Yep.
and us, and while we were up there, the crow's nest was probably 100 feet up, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, what else could you see when you looked around Tokyo Bay that day? There's the Missouri and so forth. What else would you see?
We had, I'm guessing at least 100 ships in there, at least, maybe more. But then you saw all of Tokyo Bay. It's a big, it's quite a good sized area.
Yeah. Now, I'd heard from somebody that the Japanese put out big white banners or sheets or something like that around along the shoreline. Did you notice anything like that? Okay. So it just looked like being inside of a bay, basically.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we would have seen it or showed up, but I don't remember anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then from there, let's see. Did you stay in Tokyo Bay? Did you move out, go somewhere else?
No, we stayed in Tokyo Bay, and then we went to Yokohama, and we had Liberty there. And this is where I picked up those two books and this other book that I'm going to show you.
Okay.
From I think it was a library.
Right.
And it was a trade-off of chocolate, Hershey chocolate, and a pound of sugar. Well, there was three of us, so we all got something.
Okay. Now, when you were given liberty, this is right after the Japanese surrender, pretty much, isn't it? I mean, was this just a few days after the surrender, or a few weeks?
No, this was after September 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what kind of instructions did you have, or were there any rules for going on shore?
No, there really wasn't any. Just stay out of mischief, I guess. Well, it was bombed out. Part of it was bombed out. So, but there was still places that you could go in and see. And as I say, this place still was there. And to me, I think it had to be a library where these books were.
Okay. And so you traded chocolate and sugar for books.
We traded for that, and we did get a couple of rings that were I think they were silver. I brought them home and I gave them to my sisters, and I don't know whatever happened to them. But there was besides that just a couple of rings that we had.
Yeah. Now, how long did you spend on shore?
Just an afternoon.
Okay.
I mean, that's basically you go ashore, do what you want, and come back.
And how did the Japanese people act toward you? Did they stay away?
No, I think they were frightened. They were frightened of what we could do, really. So they of course they didn't speak, and we didn't either. So you had a motion. And I know with the sugar, that pound of sugar that I had, this Japanese woman was afraid of it. She thought maybe it was poison. I remember opening up the bag, taking it, and putting it in. And I said, and told her to do the same thing, and she did. And it was sweet. and I gave it to her. So she knew it was sweet, it was sugar.
Right.
It was not poison.
Right.
Of course, the candy's wrapped up, so they accepted that way. But the sugar was a little hesitant. I think they figured it was something to kill them, but it wasn't.
Okay. So did they loosen up a little bit after that?
Yeah. Then it helped a little bit. Yeah. Well, you would too.
Okay. Now you swapped this for books, among other things. Now a couple of the books were just regular books that were just all Japanese text, so you still don't know what they are.
No.
But what was the third book?
The third one was it was a book roughly 18 inches by 11.5 inches with a picture with a photograph. Half of the book was photographs with rice paper in between each page, and on the bottom of each page there was 1 or 2 lines describing of what was going on. Then the other half of it was imprinted pictures right on the paper. How they did that, I don't know. And it had a copyright of 1943.
Okay. Now what were the pictures of?
Most of it was of the Japanese-Chinese War.
So the one that had started in the 30s and was still going on?
Basically, then in the late, I think it started in the late 20s and went into the 30s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that one, that's sort of the prize out of the collection or whatever. And
Pardon?
so that was kind of the prize or the main thing that you got there. All right. Now, after you visited Yokohama, did the ship then leave Tokyo Bay?
Okay, we went from Tokyo Bay or Yokohama back to to Pearl Harbor, and that's when they had the. We were a ferry then. Okay, we had a complement of roughly 2,300 men, and we took on 2,000. They were, regardless, they were soldiers, airmen. I don't think we had any sailors, Marines, anybody else. And if they were at Pearl, they had clearance, and they put them aboard the ship. I mean, they were all over the ship, but they kept the galley going 24 hours a day, so you didn't have any problem there. I think the biggest problem was sanitation, but it was big enough to take care of them. They maybe got in 7 days maybe 1 or 2 baths, and probably salt water, because you're adding another 2,000 men. So I think they were told your water is very, very scarce.
Right.
Drinking and that's about it, because we only have so much capacity.
Okay. And then where were you taking them?
The first bunch went to San Diego, California.
Okay. Now, did you have good weather on that trip?
I would say not the best, because we had sick guys all over the place. In fact, most of the H division that had bunk beds sold their bunk beds to these people, to these guys, because they wanted someplace to stay and someplace to lay down. And we had three beds that would come down, and they wanted it that bad. We had other places that we could go in the medical corps. There, we had extra beds all over. So literally, I did, and half a dozen of the rest of us did the same thing. We sold that. X number of dollars a day.
All right. Now, did you make more than one ferry trip like that?
Yeah. They made a couple to Dago, to Frisco, also to Frisco, and I think we made a total of 4 trips. So we ferried probably 2, 4, 6, 8,000 men.
All right.
But it's 7 days coming, 7 days going.
Okay, so you're doing this for a couple of months then?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, how long did you stay in the Navy?
Till February 10th of 46.
Okay, and were you with the West Virginia the whole time, or were...
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now, when you were discharged, did you just go off individually, or were there a whole bunch of guys who left at the same time, or what happened?
Well, I think the whole bunch of guys left at the same time, and depending upon where you lived, they send us to Great Lakes. So we had transportation to go to the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
That's where I got discharged
Right.
from, is at the Great Lakes.
Right, because that's the nearest naval base to your home,
Yeah.
basically, so you
Yeah.
go there. Okay.
That was the 10th when I got discharged. No, it was the 9th, I think. I got discharged because on the 10th I was at Aquinas College. They went. There was 3 or 4 of us that. Okay, the 1st of February their semester started.
Right.
And they were already a week or 10 days into it. So they said, you can carry 12 hours and that's it. So we carried 12 hours and started school.
All right. So you really don't have any break after you get home. You're
No.
just going right back
One
to
day.
school. Yeah. All right. And
Probably
then-
was just as good.
Okay. So then, when did you graduate from college?
49,
Okay. And what did you have your degree in at that point?
BA,
Okay, but
accounting.
what? Okay, so accounting. All right. And then, did you go into that for a career, or what did you do?
Well, got into the insurance business, and that's where I stayed. And I finally wound up owning my own agency. And then I sold my agency.
But you're still working now, aren't you?
I carried my license till this year. I'm going to drop it.
Okay.
It's getting. I've got to carry. You have to carry. You have to have so much education, and it's getting just too cumbersome.
Yep.
And I'm not doing that much. I've got to the point I don't want to.
Sure.
I just don't feel like getting dressed up
Right.
and going to people, and it could be done very easy. My resources are limited, but I've got enough to live on.
Okay. Let's see. Now, when you were on the West Virginia, did you have pretty much the same crew the whole time?
Our crew was the same.
Okay. Yeah, because you're all there for the duration.
Well, yeah, all except that we lost that first class that was. He was kind of an overseer
Right.
for us.
Okay. Now, did you stay in touch with any of the men from the ship afterward, or did they have
Yeah.
reunions and things?
Yeah. Bob Christie from Indiana. In fact, I went with him one time on a what do I want to say? A meeting, not a meeting.
Right, a reunion?
Reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when you look back on the time that you spent in the Navy, what kind of effect do you think that had on you? Or
Oh boy. Well, you learned a lot, you saw a lot, you did a lot, and you went through a lot. You did it, but I don't think I'd want to do it again. Maybe, maybe not.
all right.
I'm not under wartime conditions. I mean, we exposed ourselves 6 times. We were in 6 major engagements. I've got 6 stars for it, 6 Bronze Stars. So we were exposed, and then for I'd say April, May, June, July, August to kamikaze. I mean, I know the California got hit. We were in Okinawa. We were watching a movie, just getting dark, and a kamikaze came down on the Colorado, and they lost, I think, between 300 and 500 men. They had a movie the same time, and it hit right where the guys were.
Wow.
And just wiped them. The Mississippi got hit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ships got hit around. So while your ship didn't get hit again, You're right
No.
there in the middle. You can see where other ships are getting hit, and you can hear the attacks coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes on for several months because
Well,
of
that's what I
Okinawa
say.
does.
They called us the goat ship
Yeah.
for a long time because we weren't too far away from what they call a baby flat top.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Kaiser coffin that I don't know if has anybody ever talked to you about a Kaiser coffin.
That's one of the
Kaiser
Liberty
coffin.
ships. Yeah.
Kaiser put out a ship every 2 or 3 days.
Right.
So they took the forecastle, the front part of it, and they extended it.
Right.
And they extended the back part of it, so the thing was 600 feet. Mm-hmm. And they could fly a plane off into that 600
Right.
feet.
Yeah.
And
So
they called them baby flat tops.
Right. Escort carriers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was from here to the corner plus, and it got hit.
Yep.
And I happened to be on top aboard, or with my door open, where my room was, and that first aid room, and we saw the damn thing get hit.
Now, as you're going through this, did you expect that your ship was going to get hit again eventually, or did you just keep your fingers crossed and hope it didn't happen?
He was looking after us.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. He was looking after us.
All right. Okay. Are there, when you think back to the time you spent on the ships, are there any other particular events or things that happen that kind of stand out in your mind that you haven't brought into the story yet?
No, you had to make your own. I mentioned the name of Bob Christie. I don't know if this should be on record or not, but Bob Christie was an electrician, and I was in the H division, and the refrigeration system for the Gold Braid was one of the places that Bob Christie had keys to.
Oh.
And whenever we wanted half a crate of eggs, a half a crate of oranges, or something, I could get it.
So you had the best food the Navy could offer.
Other than what came through the line.
Right.
And it got to the point where, Graff, you know the cooks, go get some chicken. Mm-hmm. We need some bread, go to the bakery. I knew them all. Mm-hmm. So as I say, you had to make your way. And the third part of it was being in the medical corps. I don't know why they did, but they put me in charge of the locker room of supplies. Mm-hmm. And they put me in charge of the alcohol that came in 5-gallon cans. Mm-hmm. Well, during the couple 3 years I was aboard ship, I think we probably sidetracked maybe 6 or 8 of those 5-gallon cans. Well, that made 10 gallons of because that was 200 proof. Mm-hmm. So that made 10 gallons of raw liquor that you would mix with grape juice. And we had grape juice and something else that we would put in. And 3 months after you were out at sea, you could almost buy a man's soul for a pint of whiskey.
So you were a successful operator then.
So we had a group, including the cooks, the bakers, Christie. Mm-hmm. We had an Italian that those cans of fruit would come, they're not quite a gallon, and cases would just go down. Mm-hmm. And he made wine. And we had Italian wine, and it was good Italian wine. They knew we were making wine. If you were topside, you could smell it because the air blowers would blow it. And this was down on the bilge. They looked for it. They never found it. So you could hide it, and that's where the heck that still was. The still was down in the bilge. Mm-hmm. The other thing is we had beer, and they had excess in this group, one of the guys had access to that locker. And whenever we wanted a beer, we could have a case. You didn't have to have a beer. You want a case? We'll take it. Finally, they took inventory, and they were starting to miss cases. So they put 2 Marines on it to watch that door.
Did that work?
Pardon?
Did that work?
That worked.
Okay,
that
so
worked
the
for
Marines
a while.
followed
And
orders. All right.
then I quit again, and everything went back to normal again. But as I say, you had to make your own pleasure. Right. You asked what you did. This is something we did.
Right. Yeah. Well, on a big ship like that, it's like having your own kind of traveling city or town, pretty much, with all of these different people that did all these different things.
Yeah.
If you were on a tin can or something, it would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
But as I say, this is a 600 feet long. That's 2 football fields, and 96 foot wide.
Yep.
That's almost a football field wide.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it was 6 or 8 stories down and 10 stories up.
Yeah. It's a lot of room to run around.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it makes for a very good story. So I'd like to close here by thanking you for coming in and telling it today.
You're welcome.
All right.
I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.